Welcome to the Rabbi and The Shrink. I'm Dr. Margarita Gurri, and this is
Rabbi Yonason Goldson.
And he is one of my very favorite people to talk to about ethics or anything, really. I would do just about anything to listen to one of his stories. Today is podcast number 9. We're working on service. Rabbi, please kick it off. What are your thoughts on service?
Well, the sages teach that human beings were created for 3 reasons: to learn, to serve, and to perform acts of kindness.
Really?
Really, I don't make these things up.
All right. So we were created for those 3 reasons.
So why do we learn? Because learning is the way we are informed. That's how we educate ourselves. Learning doesn't just mean book learning either. It means learning from experience. It means learning through association with people of quality, people of wisdom. And learning is the process of continuous growth. And that's how we develop into intellectually, emotionally, psychologically mature individuals. Acts of kindness, I think that kind of goes without saying. We are here to be good, and we are here to extend that goodness to others. So the middle one, to serve, what does it mean to serve? It means that our lives have to have purpose. We have to have a sense of direction. We have to have ideals. We have to have values. We have to connect ourselves to something greater than ourselves. And the Hebrew word for service, which is avoda, has another meaning. It can also mean labor, because service is meant to take effort. If it's effortless, if it's natural, if it's without struggle or toil, then it's not really an act of service. If I do something for you that you like, that benefits you, you are served, but I haven't really changed if it just came naturally to me. If I'm simply going with the flow, if I'm simply doing what comes easily and what comes naturally, I'm not changing, I'm not transforming. And service has a double benefit. It benefits others, but even more fundamentally, it benefits us. Because when we serve, we develop into better versions of ourselves.
I agree. And it sounds a lot like our discussion on trust, that there's those two aspects of trust, that we are trustworthy, but that we also inspire trust in others and hold them accountable to be trustworthy as well. Well, I love what you had to say. That's really kind of interesting. So let me dive deep. So let's say that there is a husband and a wife, and she always just wants the same thing every morning. Please make me a cup of coffee. It's not hard for him. He's going to drink a cup of coffee anyway, and it's no big deal to bring it. So does that mean he doesn't get any good points, or what? It didn't take him out of his way. He was going to do it anyway. To me, that's still a lovely act of service because she didn't have to make the coffee. So what do you say, sir?
Well, this could take us into a very deep dive.
Well, good. I like the deep dive.
And let me approach it by talking about something that first doesn't appear to be related. And I'll pose you, and this can be a sort of general ethical question. Let me phrase it as a question. If you're walking down the street and you drop a coin or a dollar bill, and a poor person picks it up, do you get credit for giving charity?
Interesting question.
The sages say that you do.
I think so too.
On the other hand, they also say that if a poor person approaches you and asks for charity and you have nothing to give, so you give a kind word or you give a blessing, you are also fulfilling the precept of charity. And when I contemplated this, that was kind of interesting, because in one case you gave nothing, but you had good intent. You acted on the intent, but not in a way that tangibly benefited the recipient. You get credit for that. In the other case, you did nothing conscious. You don't even know what happened. There's no effort whatsoever. and not even awareness. And yet you also get credit. So this illustrates the two different aspects. On the one hand, if I benefit somebody else, then that is a charitable act. I've got the person has what he or she needs through me. So I have fulfilled the precept of charity. On the other hand, right, what I've done is I can't give you something tangible, but I can connect with you. I can create a sense that you're not alone, that someone cares, that you have, right, what do poor people, they have two problems. They have the problem they don't have enough money, but they also have the problem that they don't have a sense of self-esteem. They don't have a sense of self-worth. They feel disconnected. They feel abandoned. And I actually put this into practice once. I was in the old city of Jerusalem. When you walk into the old city, you pass many, many people who are asking for charity. I mean, sometimes every few feet. And after I'd given a few coins, I had nothing left to give. So what do you normally do? What we often do in that situation is we avoid eye contact. And I decided to do just the opposite. I looked each person in the eye and I said, God should help you. And it was remarkable to me because when you ignore people, they tend to often get a little bit cantankerous, a little bit abrasive. And I found that the whole facial expression changed. I saw a certain peace come over them and a little nod. It's like a recognition. Thank you for acknowledging me. Thank you for giving me a blessing. Thank you for responding to my humanity, even though you couldn't give me what I wanted. And one more thing the sages teach, if you actually give money, but you do it in an unpleasant way, you lose the charity. It's as if you didn't give it at all. Because the way you give it is integral to the giving it itself.
You know what? I agree with that. I think that's good. But I'm going to challenge the sages for a moment. I think a blessing or a smile or a kind word, showing respect. So psychologically speaking, it is tangible because it changes our chemistry in our brain and our body. There's all sorts of hormonal bing, 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 all sorts of things that happen. And those things are tangible. They make us feel better, sleep better, maybe give us the confidence to think about something differently, to feel more important, etc. So I do think it's tangible. It's not money, but I think we value money too much. I also don't believe that everyone who is poor feels disenfranchised or feels unhappy. Yes, if they have to beg, but not everyone who begs actually needs to beg. Some people are scamming the system. Others are truly in need. So you can't really assume. I learned that the hard way many years ago. That just because someone looks like they need doesn't mean they do. And just like someone looks like they don't need doesn't mean that they don't need. It's complicated how some people feel entitled to everything and others are embarrassed by needing. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I don't think the sages would quibble with you. When I use the word tangible, that was my word, not theirs.
Well, I suspected they would not quibble with me. It's almost always a chance of the words that we choose. So what would they say about the tangible gift of a blessing or a smile?
Well, it's something that it's not something that we externally can't quantify.
Yes.
For me as the giver, I can't quantify what my smile accomplishes or what my kind word or blessing accomplishes. If we have a team of doctors on staff with the proper equipment, they may be able to measure all the physiological changes that are going on in the recipient. And those are very real. And that's the sage's point, is you have given somebody something of value, even though it doesn't appear externally to be measurable. And that is that's a principle that goes everywhere, that just because you don't see an immediate effect to your actions does not mean that they're not substantive, does not mean that they're not tangible.
Isn't that the truth? That whole thing about being of service. It's tricky, the idea of serving others and being of service. Did you ever see Made in Manhattan with that beautiful Jennifer Lopez?
I did not.
It's a cute rom-com, and there's a scene in there where they're talking about service. She's a maid, and then she's talking to the head guy, and I forget his name, but basically he says to serve people takes dignity and intelligence. And then she said, although we serve them, we are not their servants. And you know that the whole idea is that what we do does not define who we are. What defines us is how we rise after falling. So the whole idea of giving, and whether it's forced giving or, you know, the whole thing of obligation and roles we play, what do you say to that? If let's say, like, for instance, I was on a train 2-3 years ago, and I like to go on them with my grandchildren. And there was a porter there who went out of his way to be so kind and thoughtful to my grandkids. He was clearly being of service. Yes, it's his job. Yes, I gave him a massive tip, but I do not believe that's why he did that. He had the spirit of giving, and I think that's what made him such a happy guy. What do you say to that? It's my job to serve. I'm being of service. Does it count less?
No, there's a story that Simon Sinek tells that I've told over many times, which I think is incredibly instructive. He talks about a time when he was staying in, I believe it was the Four Seasons Hotel, and he went into their coffee shop. I don't know, it was a Starbucks or something else. And there's this fellow working behind the counter who was just incredibly gregarious. He had a sense of humor. He was chatting with people. He was making, everybody in the place was smiling and laughing and having a great time because of the personality of this fellow working behind the counter. And so Simon Sinek asked him, do you like your job? He says, I love my job. He says, what do you love about it? He says, my bosses come in and they say, how are you doing? They know my name. They ask me if I need anything, if there are any problems, can they help me in any way? He said, in the afternoon, I work in a different hotel coffee shop. And there, my bosses are never say hello, don't know who I am. They're trying to catch me doing something wrong. And so over there, I just keep my head down, do the minimum I have to do, and try not to get noticed. And so he points out, you've got the same guy doing the same job in two different places, probably getting the same pay in each place. And it's a completely different customer experience. Because in one place, the bosses have created an environment that promotes a spirit of service. And in the other place, they've created an environment that suppresses that. If I have a job to do,
yeah,
how I do that job is I've got minimum duties, but I'm going to put myself into it, or am I not? It depends on my level of commitment, and my level of commitment is going to be very often a response to circumstances around me in that environment.
And that's the servant leadership.
It actually goes back to your original question, which I never got around to answering, about the husband who's making coffee for his wife.
I remember.
Yeah. I knew I was trying to get back to something.
You know what, you and I, we take a long stroll, but we always get back to it.
It's a long and winding road, right? Sounds like a good name for a song. My point is that when we perform acts of service, we transform ourselves. And so when we start, that's when the real transformation begins. At some point, it may become so natural that we're not really working at it anymore. We still get credit, so to speak, for the initial effort we put in. It's like learning, here's an example that I never mastered, learning to dance. And then we were just talking about this earlier. As I love the example of the what you can learn from ballet. How much effort goes into making something look effortless? Right? Once it looks effortless, I mean, certainly the ballet dancers who have been doing this for years, they're not working as hard as they were when they started. Because it's muscle memory, it's experience, it's developed. It still goes back to that effort that they put in the beginning.
Yes.
However, when it comes to personal development, we can't rest on our past efforts. We have to look for ways to set the bar higher. Maybe the husband says, honey, I was at the store and they had this new flavor of coffee that I thought you might like. So I got it to see if you would enjoy it. Maybe he puts a little Post-it note on the coffee cup with a smiley face. It says, good morning, sunshine. Because you can take that cup of coffee and you can embellish it, you can embroider it, you can transform it in any number of ways. And that's going to make it a new experience for the wife every time she gets it.
Yeah, my kids always enjoy that we would put little notes in everyone's lunch boxes. Everyone made one note, and then we would shuffle it up and put them in the lunch bags or lunch boxes, so we didn't know which one we'd get. And sometimes we'd get our own, and that was always fun because that way everyone was sharing in the moment. That's interesting. So back to the idea, though, in terms of service and giving. There's the what is the love languages? So the love languages by David Chapman talks about what kind of act of kindness or service or whatever you like. And that points out the idea that perhaps the husband in this scenario that I posed, because it's a real couple I'm thinking of, and he gets bored of doing the same thing. She doesn't want a specialty coffee. She wants the same coffee. She wants it in the same cup. She wants it in her same chair at the same time. And his act of service, I pointed out to him, is that he resists fancifying it, as he calls it. Not my term. I like that term, though, because that's what she wants. She wants the same basic thing. His act of service is not doing extra things and doing what he finds to be boring, dull, repetitive. And I think they both win.
Oh, yeah. You have really just opened up a topic that is one of the deepest, most profound, and most challenging concepts and questions in all of theology.
Oh, good.
If that hasn't scared off all our listeners, then people wonder, what was it about the challenge, the test of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden that was so difficult? God says, here's a garden. Eat from any tree you want, except that one. Because if you eat from that one, on that day, you'll die. Doesn't sound like such a big test. I can eat from anything I want, just this particular one. So people say, well, it's human nature that the moment you say something is off limits, immediately there's a desire to have it. That's true.
It is true. I always want to walk on the grass when there's a sign that says don't walk on grass. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the cartoon I saw of the guy's walking down the sidewalk and the sign on the post says no unicycle riding. And he says, suddenly I had this overwhelming urge to ride a unicycle. So there is that, but it's so much more, it's so much deeper than that, because what God was essentially saying to Adam and Eve was preserve the status quo. I gave you a perfect world. Accept it as is. Don't mess it up. And what Adam and Eve wanted to do more than anything was to be of service to God. That's what they were created for, to serve. And they weren't satisfied with passive service. They wanted something more active. They wanted something that made them feel that they were partners, that made them feel that they were contributors. And we know about feelings.
Yes.
Ultimately, it was an expression of the ego. They weren't satisfied to simply preserve the status quo. They wanted to change, they wanted to build, they wanted to contribute. And someone said that ego is an acronym for elbow God out.
Who made that up? I love
I
that.
don't know. I heard it from a friend of mine and I've quoted it often. And it's so instructive because it's all about me. It's what I want. And that's why I love your story about the husband who says, I'm not going to embellish the coffee because it's not about what I want. It's about what my wife wants. She wants the same cup of coffee. My active service is to give her what she wants. You ever hear people say, I don't like giving people presents that I wouldn't want myself? Why? What's it got to do with you?
That's back to that golden rule that you and I were talking about, that we're beyond the golden rule to the platinum. Do unto others what they would want or find respectful, right?
Exactly. And that takes creativity, and it takes thought, and it takes knowledge of the other person, and it takes getting out of myself.
Yeah, it takes a lot of thought, doesn't it? And it takes self-discipline and restraint. It is very hard to think about what others want. One of the things I love is both of my sisters, Elena Gurri and Irene Gurri. They both are the best gift givers on the planet. They really, and both of my daughters have followed in their suits, and my daughters, Jess and Kate. And I think that is such a skill and such a blessing. But I bother them, or at least the grandchildren, because every year for my birthday, which is coming up, I want a picture of the family. I want the kids to draw me a picture of the family, all of us. That's what I want. It's really what I want. Like, I need more stuff in my life? I don't think so. They resist it. They want to buy me something. They want to do something. I want to spend time together if we can. And I want this picture. That's what I want. It is so hard for them to get that that's really what I want. They want to like do more. And I think they're like Adam and Eve trying to change it, but thank goodness they don't have to worry about eating from a forbidden, tree. But that's interesting. So I had another thought when you were talking about the idea of boredom and status quo. Many, many years ago, my cousin and one of my dearest friends, Maria Anderson Evangelakis, married her husband, Ted Evangelakis. Well, Madi is one of the most ethical people I know, and she's been on service. She's been on a commission. She was a commissioner for a long time in Coral Gables, Florida. She's an amazing heart, soul, brain person. Totally amazing. The thing that sticks out for me is that Ted is Greek Orthodox. And if I remember it right, and if I'm misquoting it, someone will correct me, but during their wedding ceremony, they had to go around the altar twice because it was part of the blessing that part of marriage is doing boring, rote tasks together with joy in your heart, that was part of the blessing of being married and one of those solutions for staying married. And I love that idea of creating a status quo, even in part of the wedding ceremony. So I hope I got it right. If not, it makes a good story anyway.
It actually reminds me that in Judaism, we have what are called segulas. I haven't found a really good translation for it, but they're sort of like auspicious omens. They're things to do that beget goodness to the one who does them. And so they say that on the Sabbath, a man wears a prayer shawl. We really wear it every day of the week, but on Sabbath, we tend not to fold it up and put it away after the morning service. It stays out. And so it's a segula. It's an omen for a happy home if the man puts away his prayer shawl right after the Sabbath. So a newly married young man was asking his rabbi about this, and his rabbi said, there's an even better segula, a better positive omen for a happy home. That's help your wife with the dishes after the Sabbath is over. Now, the whole point of putting your prayer shawl away was that as men, typically, the moment we're done with something, we forget it exists. So I put my prayer shawl down when I'm done, it suddenly disappears from existence. And, in fact, mine is still sitting in the living room right now.
Must be nice. Must be nice.
And what the idea is, get out of yourself. Think of the home traditionally was the woman's domain. And don't leave my clutter around waiting for the maid to pick it up. She's not the maid, she's my wife. And in the same way, be sensitive to what I can do to help preserve the orderliness of the home, whether it's putting away the prayer shawl, whether it's washing the dishes, whether it's picking up my own socks. It's simply having that awareness. I want to do whatever I can so that my wife has the peace of mind, not just my wife, my partner, my friend, my spouse, the people who share my community, that they have the peace of mind living in their own home, in their own community, so that we can all have a greater sense of peace and orderliness in our lives.
I love that. And your office looks beautiful. It looks nice and tidy. You did good, huh?
A lot of effort went into looking so tidy.
Well, there you go. It's too easy, drill sergeant.
Everything else is off camera. So
that's the advantage of an angle, right? So this leads to me one of my biggest pet peeves as a psychologist in the world of children and parenting. It makes me, I was going to say it drives me crazy, but that's not a good expression for so many reasons. It disturbs me to no end when parents pay children for chores and they pay them for grades. How can a child be of service if they get paid? So if you're going to do your chores and I pay you, that's okay. But let's say you don't want to do it and you don't want the money. No, I don't want the money. I'm not doing the chore. And then if I pay you, you're doing it for an extra gain. So I believe that we mess up the simple concept of service and being of service by how we cajole, force, bribe, threaten, and force these daily chores without joy. Paying a child for anything like that, they should do it because the family does chores together, because they all live and grow together, because as soon as the chores are done, we can do some more fun. Make it fun. My mother used to do the conga line. This is a woman who had been very wealthy in Cuba. She came to this country, started over with nothing, and always had some household help, actually. But when she was helping us do stuff, she was very efficient. In the morning, one wash in, the next one out. She would do 2 loads, bada bing, bada boom, smile on her face. My father would mop. Everyone would die and my mother used to have a hard time that he would mop the floors, but he said it's not beneath him, he's contributing. And he did a good job. He took pride in it. It was just really funny. He didn't need to do it, but if there was a need for something extra in between when the maid came, he would do that, which is interesting. But I think that for children, my mother would say, okay, conga line, da, 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 da. We would all follow her, holding her shoulders or her waist, da, 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 go from room to room and do the tidy. And in The Nanny, that reality show, The Nanny, where she helped parents who were indulgent or clueless or struggling with values or not knowing how to parent and invite children to contribute thoughtfully. One of the things that I thought was amazing was she would say, let's do a 10-minute tidy. All right, so we have some cool, some of our participants are saying, judging from what homeless people say, what about being recognized as another human being in the effect of being seen or not is charitable? So that person was supporting what you were saying. That is Charlotte. Charlotte also said, my father used to say that when one has to spend the whole day doing a job, it must be so much more gratifying to enjoy work and give other people a good day than do the opposite. Oh, I love your father, Charlotte. That's lovely. And then, no, I am recording. Someone said, are we recording? Yes. And then Jenny says, I pay my son to wake up on time for, I don't know this word.
This is the morning prayer.
Thank you. Because it's hard for him and I want him to be able to develop good habits when he's young. Well, Jenny, I'm going to say this is the day you're going to start saving yourself some money. Pay him with love, with gratitude, with good words. I think it's a huge mistake, if you don't mind me not being politically correct, huge, huge, huge mistake to pay him to do what he needs to be doing. Rabbi, I am a Cuban Catholic. Perhaps you have a different opinion than I. Sir, should we pay our children to get up to pray?
This is one of those really complicated issues.
It
And,
is.
my wife and I struggled with this. We really wanted to make things fun, and we were so exhausted all the time. We had 4 kids, 5 and under. We were both working, and there are years of my life I can't even remember because I was so dead tired. It was a real challenge. Fortunately, we and our kids are still on speaking terms, so I don't think we did too terrible. But I remember, the discussions about having allowance connected to chores, and we never really did come up with an enduring system, mostly because of our own failing to be consistent in seeing something through. And there is that question about reward versus bribery. I think if the payment comes across as a bribe, then I think you've got a problem, because it's what you said earlier. As okay, I've got all the money I need. I don't need to do this anymore. I got a job. I don't need to do this anymore. It's not worth it for me to do what I should be doing. Whereas if you can frame it as a reward, then I think that there is a message that when you do what you're supposed to do, then that has a benefit. There are the intangible benefits, or as you would say, the less quantifiable benefits of feeling like you're part of the family, and the feeling that comes from doing a good job. But children need to be taught to appreciate those. So I'm not going to come down real strong on one side or the other here.
Good. We'll go on my coming down hard. I feel very strongly as a psychologist. I think that paying a child a reward of money is still corrupt. So I'm going to use the word corrupt, not politically correct. I think that the intention is good. It's better than myrtleizing, the Three Stooges. I'm going to myrtleize you. It's better than, and sometimes kids deserve a little bit of myrtleization, but it's a psychic thing. We don't hit them. It's best not to yell at them, but you can say, that if you pay someone a reward, how is that really different than bribery? For something they're supposed to be doing. Now, let's talk about rewards and incentives. Is there something so wrong, say, if the whole family gets up on time or does these things and we do this well, then we will all play Scrabble. We will all order pizza that night. So there's some money that might be involved. If we've done a great job with the chores and we are excited, let's treat ourselves and go out. Now, many families also have a cuss jar. And so you have different words have different value, and many families make a lot of money that way. And then there's always money to order in what, or go out. These days of COVID, going out is tricky. So that's a different thing. I think that the idea, though, of reward. So you and I want to see eye to eye if we can. And Dre Bricker is there, and so is Malcolm. Hi, guys. If you want to speak, we can give you a voice. Just let us know in the chat if you want to speak, and I'll grant you that power. This is a webinar, but we can add the talk power. So, Rabbi, let's get back to the issue. I believe there's not a big difference between a reward of money for praying and a bribery of money. Help me understand your point of view.
I'm in a struggle here because I have been grappling with this for myself. And I think that the starting point is not saying, if you do this, then you will get, but rather, this is what you need to do. This is your job. And if you do that job, then there will be certain rewards that go with that. So by not connecting by not making the behavior dependent on the payment, then it's not a bribe. It's not that you need to do this to get paid. It's that you need to do this. Once you're doing it,
and you get
okay, there
paid,
may be benefits that accrue. I really do like your idea, however, of that the whole family. What's that?
Oh, go
I
ahead.
don't know.
Go ahead.
You just froze up. I hope it's not you.
Well, we're having a snowstorm in Michigan, so even though I have,
I like your idea.
yeah. Oh, good. Good. So my whole idea is,
I like your idea that
go ahead.
the idea that the whole family works together, and if we all do our jobs, then we all benefit, because that creates the concept of community, of family, of collective responsibility. And I think those are incredibly valuable principles to be teaching children.
They are, and it's a
anyone.
pain in the neck to be a parent and to be on top of all of these things. It's so much easier to do it by ourselves. It's easier to pick it up. It's easier to change the wash to the dryer. It's easier to sort the socks. It's just easier to do it by ourselves. But it is very important that, and so my philosophy is, if a 1-year-old can help the baby, they should. If a 2-year-old can help a 1-year-old, they should. Everyone should, and I'm saying the word should on purpose, do what they can. I do think it increases self-esteem, it increases competence, confidence, a sense of understanding of how important we are. The saddest part of many children who aren't asked and required to do anything at home is two things. One is they never know how important they are. And two, they not only don't know how important they are, but they feel put upon and then criticized when they don't. So they feel like it's a burden. And then when they don't do it, which we're surprised because it's not expected, when they don't do it, then we're grumpy at them and we scold them rather than say, come on, let's do this together. I think that teaching a child to do these boring, tedious jobs with joy, put music on, do the conga line, put a movie on, and depending on what your family values are, maybe some people don't do TV, whatever reason, but do something fun. Have one child take turns playing music or singing while the others are folding the laundry, whatever. Make a joyful noise. Make it an event of fun. From Charlotte. My son was very proud to be allowed to put the clothes in the washing machine when he was 1 year old. Yay, Charlotte. And if we don't get overly critical that they forgot to pull this thing out or this, if we're going to have children helping, we need to come up with systems. So maybe the things in a little mesh bag are the ones that don't go in the dryer. Maybe the things with a safety pin in the back don't go in the dryer or whatever. So we have to make it easy. So children, milk. So they have to get their milk for their cereal. Let them help set the table. We used to have this little picture. I learned this from a woman who had 9 children. And when I had my first child, she gave me a little pitcher with a cow and that it would spout from the mouth. A little gross, but fun. And so I would fill that like she had asked me to do. I called her Bubby. I don't know her real name. She was one of my favorite colleagues. So Bubby gave this thing to me and I'd fill it up. And then my children could always put that on the table and pour the milk into their own cereal. And it would be available for people's coffee or whatever, and they were doing a service. But I had to pre-fill it so that they could be of service. So the question I ask everyone out in the audience, what do you need to do to make it workable that everyone in your life is of service to whatever is their capacity? And reminder, if we've never expected anyone to do anything, we might have to ramp up their capacity. They may not know how, and we may have to teach them lovingly. I can't tell you, as a psychology professor, I was always an adjunct in different places because it was fun. And I was often the first teacher they ever had at 8 o'clock Monday morning, Psychology 101. Can you imagine? I got lots of opportunity to be of service there. I taught lots of guys and some young girls how to do laundry. And we even ended up doing a fun skit routine in the whole class. How do you do laundry? How do you teach a life skill, and how do you make it fun? So we ended up doing that. No, I wouldn't go and teach them by going there. It was a demonstration. So, all right, Rabbi, what do you think?
Oh, well, I say we, I really should say my wife. She taught our kids to do their own laundry as soon as they could reach over the top of the laundry machine, the washing machine. And when our oldest son went away to seminary after high school, there were a lot of boys from all over the place, many of whom didn't know what a washing machine was. They would simply leave their clothes wherever they dropped them, and the clothes magically reappeared in their drawers, cleaned and folded. And my son was able to have a small business doing laundry for some of the other guys. And that's how he earned pocket money. So at that point, he suddenly realized how much he valued us having forced him to do his own laundry. And so, when you talk about providing people the opportunity, the capacity to serve, setting them up for success.
Yes.
We mentioned this, I think maybe in the past, but it's one of those sound bites I just love. If we say that it's better to give than to receive, and we say that, whether we believe it or not is a different story, but we do say it. And if we believe it, then we have to ask the question, what's the greatest gift you can give to someone else? And that's the opportunity to give. So even when we're takers, we can be servants in a sense. And you mentioned something that, I think many parents, most parents, maybe all parents struggle with, is that it's often easier to do things yourself than to let your children struggle to learn them. My wife would often joke that Mrs. So-and-so is doing extremely well in fourth grade. It was clear that she was doing all of her son's homework because she would sit down to help her son do his homework. And it was a lot easier for her to just do it herself. Of course, her son didn't learn very much by doing that. So being at service.
He learned a lot, but not what he was supposed to.
There you go.
He learned that if he's pathetic and pain enough, then people will do for him.
Yeah, which is definitely not the lesson we want to be teaching.
Lesson, no.
Right? But service, as we've already explained, is giving people what they need and doing it out of genuine concern for the other person. Even if we're getting paid for it, even if we have to do it, but to find within the job the essence of service and take pleasure in that. Revel in that, rejoice in that. I have the opportunity to serve. Maybe I have no choice. Maybe I'm getting paid for it. And then the idea of, why do I have to thank somebody? It's his job. Still, he's serving me.
Yeah, and he's serving himself by doing a good job.
So I don't know. I express appreciation.
I don't know whose quote it was, or whatever you do, be a good one. Do you know whose quote that was?
No, it's a truism that's gone around. Anything worth doing is doing well.
It's doing well. I like it. So we'll give credit to Ms. Truism. All right. So that'll be good. So the whole idea of service and forcing. If I have to force you to do something for me, whether you're a child or an adult or an employee or whatever, how does that tip the scales of service, the idea of forcing?
Well, I suppose a lot of that is going to depend on the context.
Let's talk about forcing a boy to do laundry.
Again, a lot of it's going to come down to style.
Yeah.
I'm saying now that you are approaching adulthood, now that you are big enough to take on more responsibility, now it is your responsibility. Now it is your job. To be responsible means that I have a certain obligation. I have a certain duty. There's a science fiction writer that I used to be enamored with, emphasis on used to be, Robert A. Heinlein. And he does make some really astute points that I've hung on to. And one of them, he points out that the problem with the term juvenile delinquent. We talk about child criminals as juvenile delinquents. And he says that exposes a profound flaw in the understanding of society, because what does juvenile mean? It means below the age of responsibility. What does delinquent mean? It means failing in responsibility. So how can you fail in a responsibility that you're too young to have? Responsibility has to meet the age and the capacity of the person in order for them to actually be responsible. And if we frame it that way as our children grow up, now that you are 8 years old, now that you are 12 years old, now that you are 15 years old, this is what's expected of someone your age. And this is part of becoming an adult, becoming a mature person, becoming a viable human being. And if we frame it that way, then there's going to be less forcing involved, even if there really isn't an alternative, there really isn't an option to their taking that on.
Yeah, and I think we know from psychological and sociological studies all around the world over time that the cultures that encourage participation in whichever measure of competence and ability and strength, skill, whatever is possible, are the ones with the happiest constituents, the happiest citizens. I do believe that service is the key to a happy life. The attitude of service also comes with gratitude. You cannot think of service without gratitude. I think they go hand in hand. I do think it's one of the serious keys of happiness and unhappiness. And I ask everyone in the audience, how are you of service? And who do you allow to be of service to you? When someone offers an apology, this is another pet peeve. Oh, I had several pet peeves today, didn't I?
Do you?
Yes, I did. Let's say someone wrongs you or me, and they say, I'm sorry. We say, no need to say I'm sorry. No, don't do that. Thank you, I accept your apology. Being of service means that if someone apologizes, and they should have, don't let them off the hook. Thank you, accept it, and then move on. Yeah. I think that we are too easy on people, and then we hold a grudge or we lose respect for them, and they don't respect themselves or us because they know that we'll put up with it. So the final thing I'm going to, pardon?
Speaking of pet peeves.
Yes.
How about when somebody does something for you that really is meaningful to you, and you thank them and they say, it was nothing. I know what they mean, but the words mean, wait a minute, it was nothing. It was a lot. How much better to say, it was my pleasure. I'm glad I could help. You are most welcome. Don't diminish the value of what you did for another person when it's meaningful to that other person.
Bravo. Perfect. Because, and in Spanish, you're welcome is de nada, of nothing. And, my bad for an apology. And then people say, no worries. And so then it's two negatives. There's a double negative. Where does that lead us? Nowhere. I think we have to, I think language matters. I think words and precision of words matter. We've had this discussion before. And not everyone has facility. My friend Dave Bricker is a wordsmith. He's funny as all get out because of his use of language. But an apology or how we talk to people when we're mad, it's super important that we develop our ethical muscles about how to speak to someone when we're mad, when we're sad, when we're disappointed, when we're grateful. So I have an assignment for everyone for this week. As you go through your day in this post-Valentine's joy or sadness, whichever you are, disappointment or happiness, think about service. How are you of service to those that you love and closest to you? And do you allow them to be a service to you? And then how do you acknowledge that service? That is my homework for the week. Rabbi, do you have homework? And then we'll do the magic word of the day.
I think what you mentioned about language, and we have talked about this before, I still remember we were talking about how to give rebuke.
Yeah.
And I proposed something like, ask somebody, why did you do that? Why do you think that? Why do you believe that? And you fine-tuned it. You said, can you help me understand? Because even the word why can feel a little bit accusatory, can feel a little bit as an attack. So we can all always learn better how to be sensitive, because when we phrase something in a way that makes it more easily received, then we are serving the other person by giving them an opportunity to learn how they can improve. In the same way that this is why the sages say, love rebuke. Don't we all love rebuke?
Is my fave.
I just love it when people tell me I'm wrong. Well, I should. Because telling me I'm wrong means here's an opportunity to improve. And maybe I'll take the rebuke, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll think it's authentic, maybe it's appropriate, maybe it's not. But at least when I accept it, I can consider it. I can say, is there something in this rebuke that I can take to heart to actually make positive changes in myself, which are then going to make it easier for people with whom I interact. So being conscious of the words we use, and if somebody says something that offends you or ruffles you, ask yourself, what if the situation was reversed? Would I have said it the same way? How could I have said it different? How could the other person have said it different? Take everything as a learning opportunity.
I agree.
Be more aware.
Your wife is a teacher. I mean, she knows that there's those teachable moments, but the student has to be ready and capable of whatever is being asked of them. And I think that a rebuke is only as good as it gives information that the person is capable of not only understanding and able to do, but be willing to do. And I think that's the challenge of how do you offer a useful rebuke, So that's interesting. All right. So you want to do your word of the day, Rabbi?
Word of the day has been in the headlines quite a bit lately. It is the word impeach. And we are not going to get into politics, but I looked it up to see what is the root of the word, and it comes from Latin, meaning either to chain or to trap. And it occurred to me that when we act in a way that is beneath us, that we become chained to the consequences of our actions, and we become trapped by the habits that we develop. And I may have mentioned in the past, the great sage Maimonides said that the key to life is developing good habits, because most of the time we're on autopilot. And the more that we can relegate good behavior to our instinct, to our muscle memory, as it were, to our second nature, then the more attention we have to devote to refining ourselves, to being more ethical, to being more thoughtful, to being of greater service. And so let's make sure that we're not trapped by the bad habits that we've developed over time. Let's free ourselves from those chains so that we can really do more to refine and develop ourselves.
I think that's a great word.
And be unimpeachable in our behavior.
Unimpeachable. And yet, by our very natures, we're going to be impeachable. I mean, we are human, and the only way we learn is to make mistakes. Because if you never try to do something new and stay in your comfort zone, and you either then do everything that the people before you taught you, or you never try anything new for fear of failure. So one of the acts of service that I think we can all do is take risks, and thoughtful risks, not reckless risks, and learn to think about things differently. Ask ourselves harder questions and be kind to ourselves as we answer them.
And be patient with others when they take risks and occasionally fail themselves.
But isn't everyone else just supposed to be perfect and we're the only ones allowed mistakes? I mean, really.
I thought we were the ones who are perfect and everybody else is flawed.
No, you and I are the perfectly imperfect ones. I think you and I both get a kick when we make mistakes or whatever, because we're learning from them. And I think we've come to that point in our lives where we don't have so much to prove and we don't have to be right all the time. And that's a good thing, because I'm glad to be right every now and then. It's kind of fun to help other people struggle as they're apologizing to us or asking us to forgive them. That's always an interesting dance to see, how do we together get to a better place where everyone is being loving and neutral in their language and moving forward. That is, to me, one of the challenges of ethics, that two-sided dance to move forward.
Yeah, and you just put me in mind of one of the great comics of all time, Johnny Carson. And one of the things that Johnny Carson did that was so endearing is that he would draw attention to his failed jokes. One of the classic rules in humor is if a joke bombs, just move on. But he would call attention to it. He'd reach up to where the boom mic was hanging over his head off camera, and he'd pull it down in front of him and say, "Is this thing on?" Or he'd say, Did we open the doors and let the audience in yet? And it was so, sort of, he would poke fun at himself.
Yes.
And that's what lent, even when the jokes failed, there was still a humorous atmosphere in there, because he didn't take himself so seriously, and he was able to turn the failed jokes into something that was positively humorous.
As opposed to other talk show hosts who poke fun of everyone else.
Yeah, well, that's another topic for another day.
That is a whole nother topic. Well, Rabbi, I think it's time to wind down. We have finished our 9th podcast, and this was on service. So go out there and examine service, the both sides of that, the service that you allow others to give to you, and the service that you offer to others and the universe. And as the rabbi always says, I'll let you do the sign off because you do that ethically yours. The rabbi says.
And thank you, Doctor, for running the show and keeping us all tuned in so that we can try and set the bar higher for ourselves.
I think we can. And I think that one topic at a time, one question at a time, I know we can make the world a better place.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, there's nothing special about ethics except for it's everywhere. There's nothing scary. You don't need a degree to get it. It's an everyday thing, and it is so powerful. So thank you all for signing in, and please spread the word. We'd love more people to come. But if not, we both are posting the Rabbi and the Shrink on our YouTube channels. And we'll be writing, we're working on articles, blogs, and books. And so stay tuned for more from us. We'll do our best to help you be at that wonderful place of ethical bliss.